Welcome to SaaS That App, Building B2B Web Applications, the podcast where we share real-world stories, practical advice, and tech insights for those building or thinking about starting a tech-enabled business. I am your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks.
And I'm Justin Edwards. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights you need to build your SaaS or tech-enabled business smarter, not harder. Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome back to SaaS That App. I am your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks, and I am happy to be looking across the screen and seeing the familiar face of one Mr. Justin Edwards. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how's it going? I came back after 40 days and found out I still had a job, so that was pretty cool.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And probably not only one job, but in the inbox and Slack channels and phone calls, many jobs.
Let's just say I'll be working more than 40 hours a week for the next few weeks.
It's the pay for it on the other side, right?
Yeah, but it's so worth it, man. So worth it. Coming back rejuvenated and just feeling good.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, I would say lessons learned on being gone for that long, but strangely enough, I think we got something that's appropriate for today.
Yeah, in keeping with the fact that I've been gone for a long time, today we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing a look back at some previous guests who've been on. We've picked out some particular clips that we think are pretty awesome that we want to highlight and bring to you. First up in the hopper, we've got Brett Calhoun. Next in line, we're going to hear from Tom Buchok. And finally, to close us out, we've got Joe Kowalski. So Brett has got a VC angle, the VC background coming from Missouri. And he's going to tell us a little bit about how he assesses leaders and founders and kind of what his criteria are for making a VC investment. So here he is.
Yeah, the driving force was that I really enjoyed the investing side and supporting lots of entrepreneurs and maybe more stability around you have multiple companies doing well and multiple companies doing bad versus just one company doing really bad and then really good. So maybe just more for my mental capacity, and also my first entry point into this was actually working with a fund while I was in grad school at Mizzou. And so got to support entrepreneurs in Missouri and then had a chance to work with a portfolio company there. A great team to learn and work with is called Patient, and they've been really successful now. And then I helped a friend start an angel investing group, and that led to me getting a role with a fund called the Legal Tech Fund. And we incubated a company there called Cap Gains and had the opportunity to be the first person on that team, and then ended up co-founding a lending startup, which was a good experience. Definitely learned a ton about the lending industry and capital markets and early days of building a company and what can go right, what can go wrong. And the opportunity came up to join some really successful entrepreneurs in building an incubator here. And so I stepped into that role, and through that kind of hustle and trying to figure out what we were doing led to raising a venture fund and rebrand everything into Redbud VC. And I think most people would agree that generally speaking, people don't correlate Missouri with venture capital. And that is a narrative that we're working on changing because there is a ton of talent here. There's a lot of great operators. So I don't really think like Missouri necessarily has a capital problem, or that's not a problem of like why there's not as much innovation. I think it's really unlocking that knowledge sharing and the network effects that people have here and creating denser ecosystems.
Yeah, having been a part of some of those startup weekends, even in some of the earlier days, and products of that for listeners are things like Zapier and Equipment Share. And Brad, I know that you guys have kind of rebranded that now, a bigger picture, so Missouri Startup Weekend. So tell me a little bit more about that startup weekend process, and then what are some of the big winners, quote unquote winners, that have come out of that just in the most recent years?
Yeah, you mentioned it too. In the earlier years, Zapier and Equipment Share, which are both incredible companies, multi-billion dollars now. So we took it over in 2021, but we did the startup weekend in 2022. And that was a company called Appreciate. It was a Mizzou student. He actually ended up dropping out of Mizzou to start the company. And we supported him in the early days, funded a little bit, helped him find a technical co-founder. And then the next year we ran this company called Liquid that came out, local entrepreneur Crystal, who had sold some hair salons, and then she had an idea for building an operating stack for hair salon owners who typically aren't great business operators. They learn how to do hair. And so that company's still going. We supported her early on. She got into Techstars, and it's now a revenue generating business. And then the third year we did it, the second place winner actually started their company, and it was like the WeWork for music studios. And then that person actually, Kylie, she interned for me for about 18 months, and she's great. She's about to open up her second studio now.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
And then this year was a company called Focus, and it was two attorneys that I had met, and they had a phenomenal idea that a lot of people in their industry were begging them to build. Yeah, Startup Week has been great.
So you spoke a little bit earlier about it's about the people or about the talent, the folks you're putting on your team, and you make a lot of decisions about who to work with and what to fund. It sounds like based off of who the people are. So what are the kinds of things that you look for with a founder or someone you're looking to work with or fund? Are there characteristics? Is it just track record? It sounds like you listed a lot of people with different levels of experience coming out of the startup weekend.
Yeah, pedigree is a pretty easy data point. I think a lot of the folks that we're supporting, we certainly have pedigree in the portfolio, but a lot of people haven't quite had that pedigree. Maybe they didn't go to an Ivy League school or didn't work in big tech or haven't exited a company yet. So it's a little bit harder to underwrite that background. And so, like I had mentioned before, we're looking for resilience early on in building the company. And then this isn't every company that we're in, but something that is important to us is somebody who has domain experience and has lived the problem they're trying to solve. And because of that, they've probably developed some unique insight or wedge into the market that unlocks a much bigger opportunity. And so that would be a trend in our portfolio is somebody with that background. And oftentimes, for example, construction, if you spent 1 or 2 decades in that industry, you probably have no idea how to raise venture money or have never navigated the whole game of trying to create FOMO and whatever it is that you have to do to raise funding or hiring your first engineer and managing your first product and how to do customer discovery. So there is a slight opportunity to provide some support there and figure out how to build those companies. And then having technical skills on the team is obviously important. We're not looking for someone who is necessarily hiring somebody else to build the product that they're building, that they're supposed to be staying up late at night or waking up early in the morning, that they can't sleep to think about, that they're paranoid and obsessed with. And so we make sure that they have the right skill sets on the team. Technical skills, being able to articulate super well with hiring talent, selling to customers or fundraising. So that's a little bit of it. Like I said, we're playing the power law. We're not investing in people who aren't doing this unless they're trying to create generational wealth.
So yeah, that was Brett. We're really glad to have him on the show. What we got coming up next is a little section from Tom Buchok, who's going to talk a little bit about his story with mail charts, kind of the difference between consulting and SaaS businesses, which a lot of us have a lot of different experiences with and are not necessarily opposites to one another, but complement each other a lot. So he's going to talk a little bit about that. And he's going to take also a look at how he covers his take on product-led growth, which is going to be very interesting to hear. Here is Tom. What was the kind of impetus for mail charts? Had you run into stuff in your career or a problem that you were trying to solve, or did someone kind of lay this problem at your feet and you got to work through a solution?
It remains a really cool, best described as a writer's retreat for programmers in New York City. It's called the Recurse Center, and they give programmers of all levels and all experiences between 6 and 12 weeks of time to explore what's interesting to them. I was involved in that program. At the time, it was called Hacker School. And at Hacker School, my co-founder, Carl, said, we were working on some stuff and we both kind of said, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Wayback Machine for emails? And I found some packages that let us spin up an SMTP server and start to stuff and then parse out, I guess, SMTP messages into JSON. And we said, well, let's sign up for some brands' emails and see if we can store them. And that was really the main thing, is a Wayback Machine for emails. And then from there, we received those emails. It kind of worked. And then we kind of more matured that platform. And then said, will somebody pay for it? And then kind of continued that. Let's try and see how it works. Starting our company kind of within the walls of Hacker School, one of their core ethos is never graduate. And what they mean by that is always be learning, always be tinkering, always be exploring. And we carried that with us on the technical side of the business. And we were open to, hey, let's see if this works. Let's explore, let's push the boundaries. And so that was really kind of how the business started rolling. It feels really slow. I mean, relative to consulting, and I don't know how much of the listeners may have a contractor or a consulting piece of it where you're getting client work. There's a big rush as you renew, earn new business, ship a new project that is hard to compare with some of the slow burn. The former CEO of Constant Contact, Gail, I forget her last name, Goodman, maybe, had the comment of the long, slow ramp of SaaS death. And we loved that because it was so much slower to grow your business at these like small MRR numbers, $99, $150, $39, and you don't get a real rush from it. so to speak, in a way that kind of chasing that hamster wheel of consulting. You might have a big year, but then you got to wind up and do it again. So I think for many of us that start businesses, that resonates, and that can be a compelling force to say, let's see if this works. Wouldn't it be great? Not only would it be great if it could pay you, but it'd be great to just kind of change the perspective of how I'm able to pay the bills and, save a little bit and go on vacation and stuff. Just to make sure that definitions are lining up. Product-led growth for us meant that we were able to get users to come inbound, and then the product itself would convert users to customers. For us, it was a freemium model where there was a free tier, and then you would get blocked functionally from doing the paid feature or the paid part of the application. And so, assuming that that definition works for PLG, we made a really conscious effort to be a PLG company. Part of it was personal. We really believed in the slower growth pathway of PLG. And if we have a sales team that is pushing deals, which is great, revenue is great, we may find that we have to manage to make sure what's sold is compatible with what's built. So for us, PLG represented an opportunity for us to be really good at product in such a way that people could upgrade from it. They could try it indefinitely through the freemium and really reduce our reliance on needing a lot of support. We started this chat talking about hitting those levels of business growth. And for us, kind of the early days, there was a lot of hand-holding, and there was a lot of what I think we would call like selling or customization in the contract. And later I would have called an enterprise deal. Anything that's on paper that I have to actually send an invoice and then deposit a check, to me was something I learned over time that I didn't want to do. We would do annual planning. We would look at the bigger contracts, the non-MRR businesses or the non-self-service business. And I think for us, our experience was like, what if we could just replace this income with more small ongoing business? And that happened naturally over time. I think that experience was a little bit of like, there's some scars and just like, I don't want to, emotional scars. Like, I just don't want to have these conversations anymore. We realized with our self-service credit card business that was a much stronger piece of business. And we got to the point where even some of our larger accounts that we were able to just tell them we weren't going to renew. Why would we do that? Well, most of our team, Aaron, like the important detail is I said I would handle the enterprise stuff. So that means everyone else, a half dozen people, is only focusing on our self-service business. And so when we turned down some clients, we were able to grow the business in quick time because the team was focused on it and there was no distractions. Even though there was revenue attached to it, positive revenue, there was negative distraction. And when we put our effort towards the things that we wanted to do, the business really improved.
Awesome. Great views from Tom there. Last up, we have a crowd favorite, Joe Kowalski, who has bootstrapped and built a giant company very early on in his SaaS career. He has actually quite a long history of working in the field of SaaS and just a fantastic experience, really great guy. He's going to talk a little bit about some of his mistakes, learnings that he has made over the years, how he has built expansion revenue in the context of his service SaaS. So let's hear a little bit from Joe.
I made two huge mistakes. I want to make sure I communicate to the people listening here. The first one is I wasn't smart enough of a business person at the time to really thoughtfully select my vertical market. I got in because I knew what SaaS was going to be, right? It didn't even have a name at the time. Nobody was doing online business management. What we see today and take for granted. Nobody was doing that then. And at a family reunion, one of the elders knew a lot about the carpet cleaning industry. And we just got to talking and I was like, there it is. I could be incognito for a couple of years, figure out how to make this work, and then open up to all services, not understanding that the better play is always a straight vertical approach and really growing that base out. And I chose the wrong industry. My nearest competitor, Service Titan, you may know about them because they're like a $4 billion company now. They're pre-IPO. And they got started 5 years after I did. The difference, they selected HVAC first. And they didn't have a better product. I have a far superior product. We were far leaner. We ran better. We had the infrastructure. My customer's average invoice is $250. Their customer's average invoice, $7,500. And so they could charge $1,200 a month for what I was charging her for $45 a month. That's it. That's the only difference. In the total addressable market, there's only 25,000 carpet cleaners in the United States. When I sold 2 years ago, I had like 35% of the addressable market when you really break it down, because only 35% of carpet cleaners were on a CRM. 20 years later, they were all online at that point, but it had only gone up 10 bips in flipping 20 years, right? And they couldn't afford anymore. Their invoices didn't really go up in that 20 years, right? Because it's a fairly inexpensive service, right? And it's low tech. It's easy to get into. And so lots of pressures to keep the costs low. And so bad decision. I mean, I sold for 8 figures, so I'm not whining. But yeah, I am whining because it wasn't $4 billion, which I could have easily done if I had just been smart enough at the time to pick the right vertical. The other one was pricing. I wanted to charge us just a little over cost, which was stupid considering I didn't get funded, right? I bootstrapped and I really neutered myself for growth. I could have used that additional capital as fuel to grow and invest. The other thing I did was I grandfathered any price change we made, and we only made 3 in those 20 years. 2 of them, everyone was grandfathered who was already on the system. So when we did our 3rd price increase a year before I sold, we had customers that were still on our 2003 pricing.
Oh my goodness.
They saw a 300% increase in their monthly. Now, how much did I lose, right? I was terrified, always terrified to raise prices, always terrified to raise it too much, always terrified to lose clients. Nearest I can figure, because we had a really good churn, we lost, as near as I can figure, 2% from that increase over the course of the next 12 months. So we had 3 buckets, and I didn't do user pricing until a year before we sold. One model I did have, though, is we scaled per truck, right? The way that carpet cleaners make their money is they send a truck out. And so it didn't matter to me if they were a 1-man crew or 2-man crew, right? As far as like my scaling opportunity. And so we did that for a while. But I tell you, I mentioned the pivot at year 4, which actually got us to profitability, which was revenue expansion in a different way. Because I realized one of the things that made them stay was a good marketing engine within their CRM tool. And the number one tool for marketing for carpet cleaners to build repeat business, which was the bread and butter of this carpet cleaning industry, was very SaaS-like in that way, was reminders, mailing reminders. And so I was always saying, look, click these buttons and spread out your labels. And then one day it occurred to me, I have their freaking data. I could do the mailing for them. So I ran down to Best Buy and I bought these 2 inline printers, $100 a piece. And I bought these pre-printed cards from Office Depot. We'd put them on the network as cha-ching 1 and cha-ching 2. Because every time the card come off, I'd go, cha-ching, because we were making 60% margin on those cards.
Wow.
And suddenly our monthly sales volume doubled. People were signing up because of this additional service in addition to the additional revenue that it was bringing us. And so that was a big turning point for us.
That's amazing. Yeah, you got the captured audience, right?
Right. They didn't have to do anything except go approve. And then I'd print the cards. We'd put them in an envelope. I had a team stuffing and stamping them of part-time college kids. And we made 1/3 of our revenue when I sold it through that mail program.
Thanks again to Joe Kowalski for coming on and sharing his wisdom. He's got a really, really cool story, and just having someone be so candid about the mistakes they made and looking at big differences in final valuations based off of little things from past ignorance. It's just really cool to hear. Really cool. He has that kind of clarity and ability to self-inspect. So huge thanks to Brett Calhoun, Tom Buchok, and Joe Kowalski. All awesome podcast guests. All of their episodes will be linked down below if you want to see any of them. So please check them out. The full episodes on each one of those is absolutely worth watching and listening to. And go ahead and bang the subscribe button and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for staying along with us on SaaS That App. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for cruising along with us on SaaS That App. We hope you grabbed some insights that were inspiring, actionable, or at least entertaining.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep those apps sassy.